welcome to another Mordian Glory video, and today guys I've got a really exciting one for you. I'm going to be talking about my first impressions from playing Bolt Action. Now for those of you that don't know, I recently got into Bolt Action by collecting the Imperial Japanese Army, going for some bad guys first, probably going to get a second army and go for some good guys, go for the allies. And I've been really just enjoying building and painting the models up, and I've done a few videos recently on what it's like to build and paint the Warlord Games miniatures. They've been on the Mordian Monday series, and so I was very fortunate a weekend or so ago I was able to actually have a bit of a crash course in Bolt Action, and myself and a close friend, we've been putting together our Bolt Action armies, and we had a 500-point game. Now for those of you that are unfamiliar with Bolt Action, 500 points is the equivalent of playing about a 1500-point game in Warhammer 40k. Okay, so it's not a full level, like 2k sized game, but it's about, you know, it's still, you get a good idea of the forces that you're using. So it's about 1,250 to 1,500 points of 40k points. So really, it was really interesting. And I have to say, straight away, we threw our models down. We didn't necessarily have the best terrain because we were using 40k terrain, but we muddled through. And it was crazy. It was just very easy to pick up. There are lots of small rules, intricacies, but by and large, when we were just playing with the basic rules and just figuring out how to do things, it was easy. It was really easy. And I have to say, guys, that I think that Warlord Games, and I think Bolt Action, is probably one of my favourite miniature games of all time. It really rides that line, successfully rides that line of being, you know, a historical game and wanting to have historical accuracy, but also being fun. A lot of the problem that historical games can have is they take themselves too seriously. Bolt Action doesn't. It's not as wacky, pants on head, crazy as 40k, but it's not as intense and serious and historically accurate as other historical games can be. So it very much is a beer and pretzels World War II skirmish game. And that's the key. It was a skirmish game. Even with me and Alex learning the rules, learning how to, learning everything from scratch. We'd watched a few videos beforehand, but we had to basically learn the rules. We were able to get 3 games of Bolt Action completed in an afternoon, and that's with lunch, with learning rules, with having dinner. It was, we must have got each game done in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Playing very casually, and so that's the thing. That's the first thing I want to take away from Bolt Action is it's quick to play. It's a skirmish game. And you really feel that when you've been sort of playing lots of 40k and then you come to play Bolt Action, you're like, oh, I've got my game done in an hour and a half. And it's small scale. Between me and Alex each had 1 light armoured vehicle, and then he had 3 squads of British soldiers and a couple of support and a support team and a couple of characters. And I had a light vehicle, and I had sort of 4 squads of infantry, a couple of support teams, and a character. And it was just, that's, 30, it was about 24 men on Alex's side in a tank. And I should say an armoured car, because they have actual armoured cars. It's not just tanks or speeders, there's something in between. And myself, I had about 40 infantry in a light vehicle. That was the size of the game. And it was really fun. So first thing I want to tell you, my first impression was, wow, this is actually really quick to set up and just start rolling dice. It's super simple to just start getting into the game. It's extremely accessible. So that was the first thing. Second thing that Alex and I both noticed was actually the lethality of the game. How easily stuff died. And that's to say was that the lethality was very low. So in 40k, we both know, handfuls of models get pulled off the table, unless every single turn, every single phase, unless you're playing a very elite army like Custodes. then you're pulling models off. In bolt action, to kill a single 10-man squad could take your entire army shooting, and even then you might not do it. You might not. You know, the lethality of the game is relatively low, and that's because the way it's been designed. So each man, basic man, has a rifle. Whether it's a Japanese rifle, a German rifle, or a British rifle, each man just has a gun. And they don't differentiate between the different factions. They don't say, you know, the type, you know, the Arisaka, the Japanese Arisaka has a different range, but, you know, lower strength because of its, you know, it had a smaller bullet size, but was, you know, very long barrel. They don't take that into account. A rifle is a rifle, no matter, you know, that's pretty much it. You know, a bolt action rifle, by and large, in the hands of someone, they're all very similar. So if you've got a rifle, you fire one shot. Not two shots, not double shots so you're in half range. There's not an order to double your shots. It's just, if you have a rifle, you fire one shot. That's pretty easy. If you have a submachine gun, you've only got half the range of a rifle, but you have two shots. Not four shots when you get close, just two shots. A special weapon, which, you know, costs 3 points. Bear in mind, you know, that's like 6 points in terms of 40k points. Just gives you an extra shot. There's no strength value, by the way. Just gives you an extra shot. Weird that there's no strength value, but I'll explain it in a minute. A light machine gun gives you four shots. Has a longer range, but takes 2 men to crew and feed the light machine gun. So the point is that if you have a 6-man British squad and you've got a sergeant with an SMG, 4 riflemen and a light machine gun, you'll get 4 shots from your light machine gun. You'll get 3 shots from your rifle, because one of your rifle guys has to... 4 shots from your rifle. And then you'll get an SMG. So you're looking at 10 shots. If you're within half range, normally you're looking like 7 shots. You're looking at about 7 shots at a normal range. That's from one squad. That squad has cost like 100 points. You know, it's like 25% of your army. It's like almost 100 points. No, maybe not quite. It's like 80 to 100 points. So there's not a huge. You're not rolling ridiculous amounts of dice and having to pull ridiculous amounts of models off. It's just low lethality. Now that doesn't mean that you don't, you know, kill models, because there's no armor saves in bot action. What? No armor saves? That's mad. Well, think about it. In World War II, there was no body armor. Well, there was very little body armor. The Russians had some crazy stuff, but there was very little body armor. If you got shot by a bullet and it hit you, you were pretty much taken out of action. So what happened is, so how bot action works is everyone hits on a 3, and then you add -1 to hit modifiers in. So do you have inexperienced infantry? They're a -1 to hit. They essentially hit on 4s. Is it at long range? That's another -1 to hit. Is the enemy in cover? That's another -1 to hit. Has the enemy gone to ground? That's another -2 to hit. And you can still hit on like 6s followed by 4s. So the point is that when you're having a long range duel with someone, you're off, you know, both sides are in some light cover, you're only hitting on 6s. So if you've got 10, you know, 7 to 10 shots and you're hitting on 6s, you're only going to get a couple of hits. And then how you wound the enemy, it's not based on a toughness value, it's based on an experience value. So are they inexperienced? Have they not really tasted combat before? You wound those guys on 3s, because basically what the experience level represents is, have they, you know, heard the incoming crack of rounds? Have they poked their head up at a bad opportunity, or do they know to keep their head down at that point and fire back at a different point? So if they're inexperienced, they're down a 3+. If they're regular, just normal infantry, they die on a 4+. If they're veteran, they're down a 5+. And notice what I'm saying there, they die. If you hit and then you're wound, the enemy doesn't get an armor save, they just take the model off. Now you might think there's no armor, so how does that not mean that everyone's dying all the time really quickly? Because there's low amounts of dice which have got lots of to hit modifiers affecting them. And then when you hit them, you've got a good chance of killing them. Unless they're veteran, in which case you've only got a 33% chance of killing them. So you might be like, well, what's the point in this then? Well, bolt action has a really, really good mechanic. Really good mechanic called the pinning mechanic. Where basically, even if you hit your enemy just with one shot, if you've got a squad shooting at the enemy, if you hit them, it doesn't matter if you hit them with 10 shots or hit them with one shot. If you hit them, they get a pin marker put next to them. And if each squad that shoots and hits the enemy unit puts another pin marker on them. And the pins start affecting their morale. Because you can imagine if you're getting shot at by like 4 or 5 different squads from different angles, maybe there's a mortar raining down on you, you're going to want to keep your head down. And so if you manage to put 3 or 4 pin markers on the enemy, they start going to like -4 leadership, and you need to start passing leadership checks to carry out orders. Imagine if you couldn't move because you failed a leadership check. There you go. So even if you don't kill things, you're still rewarded for getting a hit. So even there's a low volume of dice, it can be extremely valuable to just put 2 or 3 pin markers on an enemy unit and not even kill it. Because killing models is fine, but if you put 4 pins on an enemy unit, they're at -4 leadership, and leadership's taken on 2d6, and it's just like, you know, it's leadership 10 for veterans, leadership 9 for regular, leadership 8 for inexperienced. So if you've got a regular infantry squad and they've been hit by 2 infantry squads and a mortar's come in and done another 2 pins to them, they're at -4. They've got to try and pass their leadership. They've got to get less. They've got to get a 5 or less. If they don't, then they can't do anything that turn. They just hit the dirt. They go down. And that makes them harder to. It means they can't do anything, but it makes them harder to hit. So it's not a total screwing over for your opponent. It just means they're tough. My guys are now sort of dug in, but they're not doing what I wanted them to do. So if you pin an enemy unit, what happens is you can take it out of action for that turn. So good. So even if you don't kill anything, you're still able to get rewards for pinning enemy units, and that's good. So you're always rewarded. There's always something there. Now I know I've gone into specifics of the game mechanics there, but what I'm trying to demonstrate is that what bolt action gets right, and what made my first 3 games so enjoyable, was that at no point in the game was I not being rewarded. I was always having fun. I was always able to move. I was always able to get a pin marker. You know, oh, I didn't kill anyone, but I put a pin on, and the next turn my opponent tries to use that unit. He's got 2 pins on him. He fails his leadership check. You know, I felt good about that. So what I find so good about a bolt action, it's a very rewarding game to play. You know, even if you're throwing some dice around, having a good time, you know, not really worrying too much about what you're doing, you're still going to be rewarded. There's lots of tactical elements to it. What I'm saying is, like, it's not one of those games where you do everything right and then you just get denied. Because one of the big... This is one of the things I'm going to compare it to 40k for a moment. I don't really want to. I want it to be a bolt action focused video, but I know a lot of people will be thinking about bolt action versus 40k. This is the only comparison I really want to make. I might make 1 or 2 more, but this is the only one I really want to make. How many times have you gone into a game of 40k and you've set yourself, you know, you've first 1 or 2 turns play out, and you set yourself up to pull off a really great maneuver? You know, you just do it right. You do everything right. You roll your dice, and you get a good amount of hits, and you get a good amount of wounds. And then your opponent just makes loads of armor saves. And then he has a feel no pain on top of that. And then he makes all his feel no pains. And statistically that shouldn't have happened. But it did happen. And it always... I don't know about you guys, maybe I'm just a bit petty, who knows. That always pisses me off. Because I've then not been rewarded for doing the right thing. I've set myself up to do this great maneuver, And it's not through anything that I've done have I been denied. My opponent has just got lucky. And that's what's really good about bot action. If you set yourself up and your dice go off, your opponent can't go in there and snatch it off from you. If you do it properly, you will be rewarded. And that's really, really important. And that, I would say, is the number one thing to take away from this video. Bolt action is an extremely fun game. The reason it's really fun is because A, it's quick. B, you're always being rewarded. But most importantly, C, you don't get a bad taste in your mouth when your opponent just denies you through ridiculously good luck, through armor saves and stuff like that. I mean, we've all been there when someone's got a 5-up feel no pain and it feels like a 2-up feel no pain. You know, when someone's only meant to make, you get 6 wounds through on something and they make 4 5-up feel no pains. I mean, it happens all the time, doesn't it? We've all been there. Every battle report you see on YouTube, tabletop tactics, it's always happening. Always happens on my battle reports too. It's mad. And it's always happens. So imagine if you didn't have that frustration. I mean, using tabletop tactics as an example, how many times have we seen Bone just get frustrated and run off into the street or go and become a plant in the garden because because Lawrence has just rolled 5 out of 6 feel no pains, or 8 out of 9 out of 4 up armor saves. It's so frustrating, isn't it? And that frustration, quite simply, doesn't exist in bot action. And that's one of the greatest things to take away from it. And that's what I think honestly makes it one of my favourite games. I mean, I love 40k, don't get me wrong. And I'm finally starting to crack 9th edition. I'm finally starting to peer through what was initially a bit of a fog of despair. So I'm not saying, bot action's better than 9th edition or anything like that. I'm not saying anything like that. Both games are very different. 40k is bigger in scope, bigger in, in wackiness and craziness. It's all over the place. And with that craziness comes highs and comes lows. You got crazy imbalance, and you've got my luck is bottoming out. You have all those things. But in bot action, it's not as big, it's not as grand. It's a skirmish game, but it has all the advantages of a really well thought out skirmish game. It's quick, it's easy, it's very rewarding to play. The kits are, the modelling kits are, some of them are not quite as good as Games Workshop stuff. Some of them are better than Games Workshop stuff. But overall, they're a very nice, solid kit to play with. Very enjoyable. So, I honestly hope that a lot of people, this is a nice fun video. Compared a bit to 40k, but I hope that you've seen this first impressions. It's not a full deep dive on bot action. I've touched a little bit on the mechanics. I've touched a little bit on just how it feels to play, how easy it is, and all that kind of stuff. And I really hope that some people will go out and try it. I highly recommend everyone go out and try it. It's really, really good. And I know a lot of people who are a bit frustrated with 40k at the moment, and my advice would be to them is go and explore some of the game systems. I'm really getting into my bot action at the moment, but I'm also trying out my Lord of the Rings. I've also tried a little bit of Gaslands, but bot action is my secondary game. And I know a lot of people that are a bit frustrated with 9th, and to them I would just say, just take a step back. Enjoy something else, gain a new perspective, see through the lives of the Jedi. That's what you should do. And I really think if you're not sure where to start, if you and a buddy or two can get into bot action, that would be a really good place to start. And that's the one I would recommend as a transition, if you want to become a 40k refugee or something like that, as a transition game to just try something a bit different, my recommendation would be bot action. It's easy enough to get into. It's extremely cost effective. Haven't really touched on that yet, but I probably should do before I wrap the video up. A start collecting box in 40k is £50 to £60, and you get 1 squad and a character, typically, maybe a light vehicle as well. Start collecting set in bolt action, you get a 500 point army, which is like a 1,000 point Warhammer 40k army, and the hardback rulebook and your codex for £55. Oh, and you get all your dice as well for £55. So that, if you want to go for the I probably should mention at the beginning, but that is the very first impression that I had with bolt action, which is how bloody affordable it is, how bloody accessible it is. So yeah, if you want to have a quick breakaway, if you want to spend 3 months away from 40k, go and spend 55 quid at bolt action. Get a mate to spend 55 quid at bolt action. Spend a month putting the models together and painting them, and just play bolt action for a couple of months. That's what I would do. That's what I have done. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Hope you found it useful, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.